Yeah, let's just say it's been a big week for Meta because they announced the release of Llama 3, which is the next version of their foundational open source AI model. And Meta says that Llama 3 outperforms other open source models like Gemma from Google and Mistral. And it also appears on at least certain benchmarks to outperform Gemini Pro 1.5 and Claude 3 Sonnet. Now, today, there are two open source Llama 3 models that developers can freely use. There's an 8 billion parameter model and a 70 billion parameter one. There's also a 405 billion parameter version of Llama 3 that is coming soon and is still being trained. It's unclear right now, though, if the 405 billion version will be open source, but it is going to be in the wild at some point soon. Now, Meta actually told The Verge that Llama 3's training dataset is 7 times the size of Llama 2's. They also mentioned it did not use any Meta user data in its training. Notably, the training data does include a mix of what the company says is, quote, public internet data and synthetic AI generated data. Now, on top of all this, what's exciting is the fact that Llama 3 is now going to be powering the Meta AI assistant. And that assistant is now being integrated across Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Messenger. Meta AI as a tool has been kind of out for a while, but Llama 3 is going to give it a pretty serious upgrade in capabilities. And the wider rollout means you're going to be seeing a lot more of it across these core Meta apps. And if you want to go try it out for yourself outside of those platforms, you can go to meta.ai, and it looks kind of like a, ChatGPT like interface where you can interact with the Meta AI assistant. Now, it provides outputs just like ChatGPT. It's a general purpose assistant. You can ask questions, have it perform tasks for you that are, research based. It also allows you to generate images. And it's pretty noteworthy. Meta AI can actually search the web for you as you interact with it as well. So, Paul, first, I kind of want to put this into context for the audience. Like, we've been waiting for some time for Llama 3, and it seems like it's quite a big deal because it is this extremely powerful open source model. Like, how big a deal is this release?
It's a really big deal. So I've spent the last few days just trying to kind of like process this and help put it in context for everyone. So Mike, interject at any point, but I'm going to kind of go through some key points here that I think help everyone understand the significance of this. And as I've said before, history matters here. Like the context of history here is very important to understanding what's going on. So first, a quick note. I think this may be what Meta used. If not, it's just ironic. But Hugging Face announced on April 21st, so that was Sunday. We have just released Fine Web, 15 trillion tokens of high quality web data. We filtered and deduplicated all common crawl between 2013 and 2024. So I think Hugging Face has either made the training set that Meta used open or just ironically also a 15 trillion called FideWeb. So that's kind of a breakthrough that'll enable the training of models moving forward. So Hugging Face made that announcement. Another quick note just on kind of beginner's guide to LLMs. Parameter refers to, so we talk about 8B and 70B.
Yeah.
That's the billion parameters. So a parameter refers to a learned variable that the model uses to make predictions and generate, outputs, generate text, images. Generally speaking, the number of parameters, the more parameters there are, that gets into the size, complexity, and capabilities of the model. So in general, more parameters means better capabilities, natural language tasks, knowledge retention, reasoning, all those things. So as the models get bigger, so we get to 405 billion. I don't think, at least in my research again this morning, like I don't think OpenAI has ever confirmed how many parameters were in GPT-4, but it's rumored to be anywhere from 500 billion to over a trillion. So we don't know. Gemini 1.5, again, I don't think they disclosed the number of parameters, but it's also believed to be in that range. So that's kind of just basics. So now the big question is, why open source? Like, we've talked about it on the show many times. Is open source good or bad? Is it, does it create dangers to society? Um, and so I think, like, to understand, why would Meta release something this powerful for free? Like, why would they make this available to everyone when Google's charging for it, OpenAI is charging for it, Mistral is playing in the open source world, they're releasing free things. So to actually understand it, you have to go back to the formation of FAIR, which is the Facebook AI Research Lab. So this story is actually told in Genius Makers. So many times on this show, I've suggested people read Genius Makers by Cade Metz. So if you have read it, this will sound familiar to you. But I think this sets up, um, we'll go back to 2013, and then we're going to come back to today. And I think everyone will understand exactly what's happening here. So you have to go back to 2013 when Zuckerberg tried to buy DeepMind. So DeepMind, again, Demis Hassabis, Shane Legg, Mustafa Solomon, founders of DeepMind. 2010, they created a London-based research lab. That lab eventually sold to Google in 2014. Well, Facebook tried to buy them. They failed. So here's a couple of excerpts from Genius Makers that set the stage. So in 2013, it was a strange idea. The wider tech industry, including most engineers and executives at Facebook, hadn't even heard of deep learning and certainly didn't understand its importance. So deep learning is basically this idea of neural nets, which are, decades old. But Jeff Hinton had sort of coined the term deep learning around 2008, 2009 to sort of give a modern twist on this idea of neural nets. But it was the idea that AI could have understanding, language, vision capabilities, give it a human-like abilities is what deep learning enabled. So 2013, again, only 11 years ago, Facebook and Zuckerberg weren't really paying that much attention to deep learning. It wasn't really a big thing yet. It did not do the kind of research, so Facebook it's referring to, again, back to Genius Makers, did not do the kind of research DeepMind aimed to do, which was more about exploring new frontiers than moving fast and breaking things. But now, after growing into one of the world's most powerful companies, Zuckerberg was intent on racing the others, Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon, to the next big thing. This is how the industry works. The largest companies are locked in a never-ending race toward the next transformative technology, whatever that might be. Each is intent on getting there first, and if someone beats them to it, then they are under immense pressure to get there too without delay. Zuckerberg was intent on bringing deep learning research to Facebook. In the end, Zuckerberg and Scheffer, the CTO, I think Schroeper, I don't know how to say his name, made an unsuccessful bid for DeepMind. Hassabis told colleagues that he felt no chemistry with Zuckerberg. Again, this is really, really important context. So Hassabis told colleagues that he felt no chemistry with Zuckerberg, that he didn't quite understand what the Facebook founder was trying to do with DeepMind, and that the lab wouldn't fit Facebook's growth-obsessed corporate culture. But the bigger issue for Hassabis, Legg, and Solomon was that Zuckerberg didn't share their ethical concerns over the rise of artificial intelligence in either the near term or the far. He refused, being Zuckerberg, to accept a contractual clause that guaranteed DeepMind's technology would be overseen by an independent ethics board. Quote, "We could have made more money if we had just been going for the money," Legg says, Shane Legg, the co-founder, "but we weren't." So it goes on to say, Facebook faced the chicken and egg problem. It couldn't attract top researchers because it didn't have a research lab, and it didn't have a research lab because it couldn't attract top researchers. So Zuckerberg, based on some guidance, set his sights on recruiting Jan LeCun to Facebook to run this lab. LeCun initially shut down these overtures. So there's a quote in here. It says, in a phone call with Zuckerberg, LeCun said, "I can consult with you, but that's about it." He had had similar conversations with Schrep, which is the guy's short for the guy's name, in the past, and his stance had always been the same. Zuckerberg, though, kept pushing. Facebook was at another dead end. Schrep had approached several other leaders in the field, from Andrew Ng, who we know is the founder of Coursera. He was the founding lead of Google Brain, and Yashia Bengio, who's an AI legend, research legend. And still, the company didn't have anyone to run its lab, someone with the heft needed to attract the world's top researchers. So again, still in 2013, He gets to a dinner with Jan LeCun. Just between the two of them, Zucker explained his grand vision for AI at Facebook in the future, and this is really, really important. He told LeCun interactions on the social network would be driven by technologies powerful enough to perform tasks on their own. Sounds a lot like AI agents, doesn't it? In the short term, these technologies would identify faces in photos, recognize spoken commands, and translate between languages. In the longer term, intelligent agents or bots would patrol Facebook's digital world, take instructions, and carry them out as need be. Need an airline reservation? Ask a bot. Order flowers for your wife? A bot could do that. When LeCun asked if there were any areas of AI research that would not interest Facebook, Zuckerberg said, probably robotics, but everything else, everything in the digital domain was in bounds. Two other quick excerpts. The bigger issue was how Zuckerberg viewed the philosophy of corporate research. LeCun believed in openness, concepts, algorithms, and techniques openly shared with the wider community of researchers, not sequestered inside a single company or university. The idea was that this free exchange of information accelerated the progress of research as a whole. Everyone could build on the work of everyone else. Open research was the norm among academics in the field, but not in big internet companies. Facebook, Zuckerberg explained, was a big exception. They had built on open source. They believed deeply in it. And so basically, Zuckerberg and LeCun agreed to pursue this together. But LeCun's stipulations was he was not leaving New York. He was not leaving New York University. And basically, Facebook had to agree to keep everything open. Because in LeCun's opinion, that was how you were going to recruit the best researchers. So that's the context of why is Meta so committed to open source? One, that is what Zuckerberg committed to LeCun they would do, and LeCun still runs AI at Facebook. Two, it is the foundational belief. The thing that wasn't discussed, though, in Genius Makers and hasn't been probably as widely discussed is the more likely scenario, or a third key component of this, is the competitive element. Facebook has, according to their own earnings reports, most recent, so this is from 2024, they have 3.07 billion monthly active users on Facebook. So that doesn't even include WhatsApp and Instagram, I don't think. So that's just Facebook. So we've always talked about distribution being key. So everything that we're going to talk about with Llama 3 and what Facebook is doing is, to this point, open source and free as a user. So there was a great tweet I saw from Naveen Rao, who's the VP of Gen AI at Databricks, and he said, I don't think everyone has comprehended the massive disruption and distortion that is going to happen in the Gen AI market due to Llama 3. Moats will be destroyed and investments will go to zero. Just like everything in Gen AI, this will all happen fast. So now we kind of come to the Llama announcement. I don't know, Mike, if you have tried this yet, but have you gone to meta.ai yet?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
It is, okay, so meta.ai for everybody, if you haven't tried it yet, go to it. You have to log into through your Facebook account. At least I had to. I couldn't do anything without it. So they released meta.ai with the Llama 3 announcement. The thing that, again, Mike and I mess with this stuff all day, every day. I was blown away by the autocomplete image generation thing. Did you try that yet?
I did. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
So if you haven't seen this yet, the way this works is if you think about autocomplete, like in Gmail, where it's like finishing your sentences, or when you're in Google search and it's like finishing your search query, they are doing that for image generation. So if you start, like I was just playing around with, like, my daughter's favorite thing is pandas, like her favorite animal. So I was like, imagine a panda. And so it creates a panda. And I was like, on the moon, and it's on the moon instantly. Drinking a glass of scotch, playing cards with his friend, and it's like, now he's got cards in front of him, and the friend is a red panda instantly. Like, it's just, and it's so fast. And so it's now creating the image as you're typing. It's auto-completing the image. It is wild. And I assume where they're going with this is like video audio completion eventually. And like, you can start to see the potential of this, but this is also baked right into Facebook, Instagram, and I assume WhatsApp. I don't use
Yeah.
WhatsApp, but
Yeah, I believe it
I
is.
have tested it in Facebook and Instagram. And so you have now your search bar in Facebook and Instagram is basically a Ask Meta AI, I think is what it says. I have seen people complaining like, how do I get rid of this Meta AI thing? What is this thing? So like we've always said, like eventually this stuff trickles into society and now we have billions of people with access to Meta AI and your relatives and friends may be like, what in the world is this Meta AI thing? And you can now explain to them what it is. Um, so that is like the real key is they're opening it, but by doing this, it is a direct attack on OpenAI, Google, Mistral, like Anthropic, everybody, because what Zuckerberg is basically saying is like, hey, we're going to spend whatever they're spending here, 100 billion, eventually they'll spend 100 billion. They're probably spending a couple hundred million right now. Maybe the 405B model is going to be a half a billion to whatever $750 million run, training run, and they're just basically like, yeah, whatever, like we'll give it away for free because everybody else is trying to charge for it, so they can basically
Mm.
undercut everybody, and then they can make it readily available, not only build on top of, but to build right into their network. So that was it was amazing how they did it, but to start seeing the technology and to seeing their plan, to know that while they've been doing AI for 11 years, basically, it's been a key part with the research lab, um, and, machine learning longer than that. They've really been only playing this Gen AI game since like late 2022.
Mm.
And here they are with Llama 3 that is, apparently on par with at least GPT 3.5, if not, probably GPT 4 once the 405B model comes out. So I had one other thought on the Dwarkesh podcast, but I don't know, any other thoughts from you, Mike, and just like what you're seeing so far and kind of early thoughts on Llama 3?
Yeah, I just think it's worth belaboring the competitive disruption point here. And I think you had surfaced, Paul, another tweet from a user basically was saying, look, by releasing this, Zuckerberg undermines competitors to the point of destruction. It's like if these companies were all teams in a strategy game, Zuckerberg just nuked part of the map, I feel
Yep.
like, and prevented the others from benefiting from it. So
Yep.
I think that's very fascinating. I think you have to maybe just consider the more cynical or self-interested or realpolitik motivations here if you're trying to understand where defensible moats are, where competitive advantage is going to lay moving forward.
Yeah, and you hear about these like wartime CEOs. Like
Hmm.
Zuckerberg's a killer. Like
Yeah.
whether you like the guy or not, there is no issues with him doing what has to be done to win. Like that is what he has always done. Where some of these other big tech companies we talk about maybe just don't have that mindset. Um, so yeah, that matters. So the other thing I'll note is I would suggest if you're really interested in this stuff, go listen to this podcast. But Dwarkesh Patel, who we've talked about before on the show, he had one of the two interviews Zuckerberg did. So the way they basically dropped Llama 3 was they put out a release about it on their own site. And then Zuckerberg did 2 podcast interviews and then they just put it on social. Like that was the launch plan for
Mm.
this entire open source model. So a few key topics that Zuckerberg addressed in this interview with Dwarkesh. So one is 405B is in training now, like that is actively going, and it's already approaching GPT-4 level, and the training isn't even done yet. So
Mm.
he said, like, hey, this thing is going to be really, really powerful. We're already seeing incredible results on standard benchmark testing, and we're not even done training it yet. There was an interesting side note where he talked about, we mentioned a few episodes ago how they were going to have the equivalent of like 650,000 GPUs from NVIDIA by the end of 2024, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so he asked him about that. And apparently they pre-bought a lot of these things in 2022 when they were building out the Reels capability because they were so far behind TikTok. And he said, ironically, some of the most important decisions we made were to catch up from previous screw ups. So he said, like, we were behind, like TikTok killed us. So we had to come out with Reels. And so they envisioned a world where they were going to need to do way more compute with Reels. And so they bought double the amount of GPUs they had planned to just to prepare for it, which then ended up having those GPUs there ready to be used for AI. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. Dwarkesh asked him about AGI and like, hey, when did that become kind of part of your focus? And he said it's basically been a progressive thing since they started the research lab 10 years ago. He said the idea was that along the way to general intelligence or whatever you want to call it, there are going to be all these different innovations, and that's going to just improve everything we do. So we didn't conceive it as a product. It was more a research group over the last 10 years that was infused into their product. But then he went on to say like ChatGPT and the diffusion models really accelerated everything for them. They then saw the potential. Um, when he got into asking him, like, what does he think about when he's building the next versions, Llama 4, Llama 5, Llama 6, whatever, there was a couple of things that I thought were interesting. One was he said, so much of the human brain is just dedicated to understanding people and understanding expressions and emotions. I think that's its own modality. You could say that maybe it's just video or image, but it's clearly a very specialized version of those two. So he talked a lot about emotions and expressions, which they obviously have a ton of data to build on, as being a key part of where they're going there. And then he talked about assistants and agents and things like that. And then they got into Llama 4, and he said one of the trickiest things in the world to plan around an exponential curve. How long does it keep going? I think it's likely enough that we'll keep going. I think it's worth investing the 10 billions, tens of billions, or hundreds of billions in building the infrastructure and assuming that if it keeps going, you're going to get some really amazing results. So again, we keep hearing this from Sam Altman for sure, Dario Amodei at Anthropic. I don't know about Jan LeCun. I don't know that he's always on board with this idea of the scaling laws, but now you're hearing from Zuckerberg. They're basically saying like, yeah, we're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in energy and data centers and chips because to all of their knowledge, the scaling laws appear to be staying true, which means throw more compute, give it more data, give it more training time, and these models just get smarter. So that's why we're hearing Amazon building data centers next to nuclear power plants, why Altman's raising, supposedly trillions of dollars for building out energy infrastructure. So it's all kind of connected. And then the last one I wanted to address here is, again, Mike, you and I talk about, is open source good or bad for society all the
Mm-hmm.
time? And I'm always kind of shocked at how poorly they all are prepared to answer this question. So, Dwarkesh, to his credit, pushed Zuckerberg on the topic of the dangers of open source as you start getting into these smarter models. And he basically said, they don't have a toxic, he said, Dwarkesh said, when would you not open source something? Like, what would you need to see in a future model that would stop you from open sourcing it due to concerns? And he said they don't have a taxonomy for that yet, that they do, in fact, have 18 or 19 categories that they look at for harmful things related to social media that they plan for. And he said, basically, we probably need to do the same thing for this. But then he very quickly sort of just deflected the whole conversation and said, yeah, but centralizing AI could be worse. And this is the answer you get from all of them, whether it's Ahmad, formerly at Stability, or him, or Dario Amodei. It's like, yeah, it could get really, really bad, but we think it's better than like 3 key companies deciding our future. So I don't know about you, but like, it just doesn't sit well with me. Like I don't feel, and we'll talk about the Dario Amodei thing in the next episode because I have a lot of, he just gave a pretty far reaching interview as well. And he had a lot of opinions on this that I have thoughts on, but I will just say Dario's thoughts echo what Zuckerberg's saying, which is like, yeah, it could go really, really bad, but as long as it's not centralized to like 3 companies that we don't trust, then it's better than the alternative. Yeah. So it's, again, go listen to the interview. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on this one, Mike?
No,
I feel like we could talk Llama 3 all day.
Oh my gosh, I know we could do a whole episode on it. No, I think your concerns are well founded with open source. I would suspect we're going to see some type of backlash once some truly damaging application comes out. I mean, I'm sure in the dark corners of the internet, it's already being misused, but there will be probably, my guess would be some high profile examples where it's like, wait, somebody just downloaded this thing from GitHub or wherever and started doing whatever it is that they've done. So I would fully expect, yeah, like we've talked about that wider societal potential backlash against AI in general, I could see this being a component of that.
Yeah, and again, like I'm not for or against open source. Like I'm not even taking a stand that I think it's bad for society. It is truly one of these like unanswered things that every time I hear one of these massive advocates for open source talking, I keep waiting to hear the justification that I'm like, yeah, okay, actually, I'm in the open source camp now. I
Mm,
totally get what they're coming from. I understand their concerns around limiting AI to a few companies. We talked about that when Altman got fired, and we're like, oh, we're trusting this company, this
yeah.
like dumpster fire of a company at that moment to shepherd an AGI. Like, okay, I kind of understand the need to have this open. So I'm very much in the middle here and just kind of like open minded to any conversation, but I don't ever hear a good answer with the, yeah, but you're open sourcing a really powerful thing that can be used for disinformation and can be used for persuasion. And we can't assume everyone's going to be a good actor in this. They just kind of blow it off and say it's better than letting it be controlled by the government or these other entities. So to be
Which
continued, I suppose.
which tells me that it's inevitable we're going to get that future where
You'd think.
it's just going to be allowed to proliferate however you want it to.
I
So
think we're probably
we're
there.
there.
We're going to be there this year.
Yeah.